Hey guys, so good news, bad news. Good news is I'm starting to post more videos on my YouTube. Great. Yeah. Bad news is that unfortunately for the next 3 days my phone will be locked. So that's fun. So I thought that since I can't go to work and I basically can't leave my house, I thought that I would make more YouTube videos, or at least start up with my sewing videos. Another bad thing, it looks like in the US, TikTok may actually get banned. So if you are coming from TikTok, if I post this in time and you're coming from TikTok, hi. I will be posting ice skating videos of me going around Japan, as well as some sewing and cosplay videos. I don't know exactly how all that's going to play out yet, but I will be doing that. So without further ado, how about we get started with a sewing video? So if you're coming from my TikTok, you probably already know that a while ago, one of my students gave me a bunch of kimonos and kimono accessories, as well as yukatas, and she basically said, do what you want with it. And I was looking through them at one point, and I don't know if you guys can remember, I already started drawing and mapping it out, but I don't know if you guys remember this kimono jacket situation. But yeah, she gave me one of these. A lot of her kimonos and kimono accessories were from her grandmother, her mother, and her grandmother, from what I can remember. But she doesn't use them, she doesn't wear them, and she heard that I would like to get into kimono. And she also knows that a lot of people, when they have old kimonos, they use it to make other things. With that being said, today I am going to attempt to make kind of like a I'm going to make a top. It's going to be a top, but it's going to be kind of like a milkmaid top, if that makes sense. It's going to have like a vest type situation with this old shirt that I wear for work, if I can get the situation. And I chose this top, of course, because of the sleeves, but also because of the texture of this shirt. Works really well with the texture of the jacket. I want to call it a jacket, but I'm not really sure what it's actually called. But yeah, I'm going to kind of cut and sew these two things together. Yeah. Now, with all that being said, I do want to teach people how to sew, and with this video I'll just go more in depth with that as I show you guys how to make this. But I do want to teach people how to sew, especially people who are beginners and want to make their own clothes, or they have clothes like these laying around that they want to make look better for maybe their aesthetic, or they're like, oh, I want to go out and buy new clothes, but everything's so expensive, can't even go to the thrift store and find anything good. That's cool. That's why you probably clicked on this video. Maybe, I don't know. But that is also why I would like to teach beginner sewing videos on YouTube. And hopefully, if TikTok is still up for the US, I will also teach it on there. But I will shut my yap, and we will get into making our shirt situation. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, because I don't have a dress form, I used to, but especially if you are a beginner, some people don't have dress forms. That's okay. But the first thing I want to do when it comes to altering clothes so it can fit, so it can look better, look nice on you, look the way you want it to look, you put it on. Just essentially put it on. Preferably, if you're a woman, put it on with a bra or something that you usually wear under your clothes so that it could look the way you want it to look afterwards. This one has snaps, so I will put it on with the snaps. This is also a very confusing piece, just altogether. Alright, so now we have it on. I'm pretty sure this is supposed to be a more loose fitting outfit, top, jacket situation, but that's neither here nor there because it's going to be cut up anyways. Alright, so now what you are going to do is find chalk. Now what you're going to do is assess the situation. This is basically going to be the main piece of my top because the white shirt is only going to cover so much, being the sleeve, the shoulders, and the bust. This is going to basically be the entire piece or main part of the top. So we have these sleeves here, which we're going to get rid of. It also goes down to like mid-thigh, I believe. You can turn it around, see, take a look. Goes all the way up. With your piece, you want to do the same thing as well, just to make sure you know what you want to do to it. So step one, assess your items. I've worn the white shirt 1,000 times, so I already know how that fits on me, so I'm not too worried about it. When I go and cut it up, I'll do a little bit of measurements, but I'm not really worried about how that fits. Another thing you want to do, especially if you're getting into sewing, is get you a piece of chalk. I have yellow, you can use white. I also know that there's like water soluble color pencils that you can use, and they also have markers specifically for fabric. None of those tend to work for me, so chalk is my favorite. I wouldn't say to get colored chalk or like your favorite color, you want blue or pink or I would just probably get white or yellow, because these stand out more, and they can easily, if you had to get rid of it or when you're done with the project and you still see chalk, you can get rid of it and it won't really leave that much color behind, but I'll show you that at the end if there's anything left. That being said, second thing you want to do is kind of draft the outline of what you want. So we're going to start off with basically the length and how long or where I want it to stop. I want it to stop kind of maybe right here, okay? Right above the hip area is where I want it to stop. And I say that because you can also wear it with like skirts and things like that, and it'll be a little bit seamless. Now this is where you want it to stop. You see how good it shows up? But this is where you want it to stop. That's not where you're going to be sewing though. Okay, that's not where you're going to be sewing. So right now we're just going to be drafting where we want it to be, where we want everything to lay. But eventually we're going to get into making a seam allowance. Seam allowance is going to be the extra inches, centimeters you'll need in order to sew it, so that sew everything together so that it ends up being at your desired place. I didn't go all the way around because I can't go all the way around, but if you get your chalk and you go and try and go to the back, I may want it to be around here, so I'll do kind of like a cross in the back, and that will tell me when I take this off where it's going to go. So now I'm going to do the top part. Because this is Japanese clothing, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for me. Because usually with American clothing, it kind of just stops close to the shoulder. But this one, the sleeve kind of goes all the way down here, and then you have the other part of the sleeve. You also have this ordeal going on, which is like a big sleeve hole. In most European or American clothes, that would be sewed up. But in most Japanese clothes, like kimonos and yukatas, it's not sewed up. That's okay though. We're gonna get over that. So I want it to be kind of like a milkmaid style top. So essentially the bust area is going to have the white part, I think. Yes. So the bust area is going to have the white part, and it's also going to be outlined with straps, faux straps, because it's going to be attached to the white shirt. So what I am going to do is outline. Again, we will go back in and make sure everything is clean. Now, if you're a beginner sewer, of course you wouldn't have a dress form. But if you have a dress form that is specific to your measurements, you can use it. That would make it 10 times easier. I'm in the process of trying to find a dress form, but this is what we have right now. But yes, so we are going to use this for the outline and then go up. And this is more of like the non-math way of doing things, which is if you don't like using math, then stick around, because I don't like using math either. But I've already created a line here that I'm trying to match up with it. There seems to be like a wrinkle, so let me see if I can This is going to be cut out anyways, but I am going to put a pin, just because. A little side note, this is one reason why I like working with vintage pieces or old clothes, because they're very durable and they're very forgiving. Newer clothes, if I were to do like some cutting up or try and do some altering, it's not very forgiving. This one I believe is made out of cotton, but it's a very thick, very durable cotton, so it's going to last. It will last. And I'm considering, I believe that this is for outside activities like gardening. This was definitely made to last. Anyways, so now I have, you can see here, I have this little thingy pinned up. I think because we have the open sleeve here and I have a large bust area, it's going to have this little flap, which is okay because I can just pin it down. For now, of course, I will pin it down. And then after I've done my drafting and things of that nature, I will smooth everything out. But yes, so essentially this is what I would want it to look like. So it's going to go around the bust, go all the way up. Now I have basically the inside of it. What I want to do now is figure out how I'm going to do the strap. Here we go. I think I'm going to do it such as this. Alright, so of course you have the little flat there, that's no problem. And you also see it stopped right at where it began. Again, this is just a rough draft. Just like every other essay you had to write, it's just a rough draft, so you don't have to worry about it. Now, technically you can stop here, and when you cut it out, you can also just mirror or flip it so that you can cut it. But if you want to have like a precaution or an extra safety net, you can do the same thing that you did on this side that you will do on this side. And yeah, that's what I am going to do now. Alright, so you probably can't see it well, but the rough draft for it is good. Now, next thing you'll have to do is think about how it's actually going to look. So, if you take a look at where you have your lines, now if you're following me, you know where the lines are. But if you take a look at where you have your lines, you can see button, there's a button up here, there are buttons, which is not really going to matter because it's going to be cut. This area is going to be cut. Take a look at the back. Is there anything showing? I don't believe so. You also have the sleeves. Okay, when I used to do cosplay panels in the United States, I always harped on reusing everything. So even if you're like, I don't know what to do with these, or I'm not going to use them, don't throw them away. Don't throw them away. Okay, maybe in a later video I can show you guys what to do with them, but don't throw them away. Okay, now don't hoard them, but also don't throw them away, because you can always use them for other things. Okay, you can use them to clean, you can use them to draft other patterns, whatever the case may be, but don't throw them away. Okay, that's very important, especially nowadays with all the climate change and things of that nature. Try and keep these. Of course, if you clicked on this video, that this is another environmental change that, and well, this is a environmentally friendly video that can help you, okay, be more environmentally friendly by not throwing away your clothes and reusing your clothes. It will also help you with altering clothes or mending clothes that have like holes or need buttons, everything. Well, not this video, but this channel will. But anyways, you have your outline, rough draft for the top. So now what you can do is take it off. So mine has a lot of snaps. I'm definitely going to be saving these snaps for later because I have other cosplays that I need these snaps for. The buttons, not so much, but you can't go wrong with a lot of buttons. But anyways, you're going to take this off. Now, with that being said, if you are Frankensteining two pieces of clothing together and you don't know exactly what you're going to do with your second piece, you can always put it on and do the same thing that you did with the first piece. Like I said before, I already know what I'm going to do with this one, so I'm not really going to put it on. However, I do know I always have a problem with knowing the front and back of this piece. So to make sure, and I say that because if you put it on a certain way or if you hold it a certain way, it will seem as though that it's in the front, but then it ends up in the back. But hey, that's neither here nor there. But anyways, I believe that this is the back piece. The back side of the shirt. So what I am going to do, because I'm going to be cutting it up, is I'm going to take safety pins. Now, I looked out and these are my mom's safety pins. Safety pins are a must. Safety pins are essential. Safety pins along with straight pins, like the design dresser alteration pins, are definitely a must. I would prefer to get the ones that have color on them, and also the ones that are straight that don't have color on them, because the straight ones are good for like altering and maybe doing drafts. The colored ones are good for like sewing, like putting it on the sewing machine, just so that you know what you're doing and where you're going. But anyways, you're gonna take your safety pin, or I'm gonna take my safety pin, put it on the back, and that's how I know that this is the back side. So when I go and cut it up and when I go and sew, I will not attach the wrong piece. That being said, as far as this shirt will go, I'm definitely going to be using the sleeves because I like the frilliness of the sleeves, and I may use a little bit of the I don't know what the technical term for this is, but I will also be using some of the sleeve hole and shoulder piece. And to fill in the bust area, I will be using the bust part of this shirt. This shirt fits pretty loosely, so if I can, I'll probably make it I'll cut it a little bit wide so that I can pleat it in. And I'll show you guys what I mean when I get to that part. Okay, so the next thing we are going to do is cut it out. Now, like I said, I'm lacking supplies, but if you have a dress form, you can put it on the dress form. If you do not have a dress form, you can always buy a measurement mat. There are cardboard ones, and then there are like more professional silicone ones that you can put a rotary cutter over. When I had it, it was a cardboard one. It laid out pretty wide, but if you have a cutting mat, that would be ideal. If you don't have that, that's also fine. But you can always lay it on the floor, which is what I am going to do. But before I do that, I want to show you all what to do next. So, as you can see here, if I can get it up, as you can see here, you have your line that you drew before, along with your cross and the other piece of the line. You want to make sure that those are connected in a way. So if you want to make it higher, you can do that in the back, or if you want to make it lower in the back, you can do so. But you want to make sure that everything is connected to the way you want it to be. You also want to make sure that it's flush. And what I mean by flush is I mean that when you go to sew it, it won't bulk up on you, or it won't be so technical that you won't be able to sew over it, or it looks weird when you're done. So you can go ahead and connect those to the back to make sure that everything is flush or flat. So my line has been drawn. Okay, this is where it is going to be when it is done. As you can see, the cross is a little bit too far up, so I lowered it down because I want to be able to wear this shirt to work and out, because I told myself I needed more work clothes. But anyways, the line, I did lower the line so that it matches with the line that I drew before. And this is just going to be an example, but with all of your lines, you want to make sure that you add a seam allowance. This seam allowance I would do about 1 inch. And the trick that I like to use for that, especially because I don't like carrying around my measuring tape all the time, is my pinky. So my pinky has, you have first one, second one. This here is, I believe, about 1 inch. So I kind of line it up with the line that I draw. So I line it up with the line that I draw, and I give it about 1 inch of seam allowance, so that I am not cutting on the line that I drew first. I'm cutting on the line that I draw second, or the line that I'm drawing now. The seam allowance will allow you to do hems, allow you to sew fabric onto other pieces of fabric. It's mostly used for sewing. So you want to make sure you have a seam allowance wherever you are going to be sewing something to something else. And for this case, I think I will be adding a seam allowance to all of them. Now for the bottom, for the hems, I like to add 1 inch, just in case. And I also just like how the thick seam looks. But I add 1 inch to the bottom, and for the straps or the front part here, I will be adding 1/2 inch. because I won't be using any thick fabrics. I won't be using any thick fabrics, and I also won't be I won't be adding any thick fabrics, and I also won't be, when I do the hemming, I would want the straps to seem small. So I don't want to use like a big hem, like an inch. I say that like it's huge, but it's not. But I don't want to use an inch because it's going to make it look too bulky. But anyways, yes, so what you are going to do now, and I will show you an example of it once I get off the floor, is add your seam allowance. So again, that line towards the bottom will be your seam allowance. So this wouldn't be a beginner sewer video if I didn't talk about measuring tape. Okay, you have measuring tape that can extend for as long as 120 inches. Okay, but the one that you want to look for is something that's about 60 inches. 60 inches is okay. And I say that because many of the things that you are going to be doing don't go past 60 inches. Now, I will be making a YouTube video where I upgrade some of my ball gowns, which may require to be more than 60 inches. But when that time comes, I'll show you what to do. Now, this is a very old. This is an old tape measure, which I think this is probably my mom's sewing tape measure that only goes to 50, and I think it was because I cut it off when I started sewing. So I don't need a whole 60 inches, so it stops at 50. That is fine. But what you are going to do, I would also, side note, get one that doesn't have this kind of like design here. I think this is also just to showcase the brand or the business, but find something that's a little bit, that gives it a more naked end, not cut off, but naked end. But anyways, my seam allowance is going to be 1 inch for the bottom. So for example, I'm going to use my shorts. So you see the little white piece here? We're going to put the 1 inch at the top, at the bottom of where that white piece is. Okay, and then this is probably a bad way of showing it, and then 1 inch from there, we are going to make our line. Once we make our line, we will cut it at that line. Okay, make sure you cut it at that line, or you'll end up like me, who will not cut it at that line and then has to redo everything. But anyways, seam allowance. Alright, so this is just to show you guys what the situation is. So as you can see, this was the line that I sewed. This was the line that I drew first. This is the seam allowance line. A lot of people like to do dotted lines. I don't really do that. I just do it all the way across. It just makes it easier for me. But if you want to do a dotted line to differentiate which one is which, you can do so. But yes, I'm going to be basically doing the same thing that I did for the bottom of the top with everything else. But I just wanted to show you guys this as an example. So we are going to go ahead and make sure that each line that we drew has a seam allowance. Again, for the bottom, I am doing 1 inch, and for the straps, and then everything inside it will be 1/2 inch. Okay, so now I have the seam allowance for all of my lines. It looks a little bit rough, but it will look better in the end. Usually for seam allowances, I always say that as long as I can read it and understand it, it'll be okay. I also have the seam allowance for the neckline in the back. I don't know if I can show you. Here it is. In the back that we are going to follow. Well, that's not the seam allowance, but I'll add a seam allowance later. And so now what we are going to do is we're going to start cutting. When it comes to scissors, there's many different scissors to use. These are Ginger scissors, which are like a higher quality scissor. Very sharp scissors, which is why it comes with its own case. I mostly use this for more finer, thin fabrics such as chiffon or organza. You can use it for things like cotton and things like that, but I don't really use it for those. Next one that you would want to look into are small sharp scissors. I use these for things like hand sewing, or if I'm doing embroidery, I would use these, because if you use a big scissor like this, there is a chance that you could also cut the fabric. So having something small like this, and if you do have a mistake, it will also just be a small cut. But these are some small scissors that you can purchase. Another one that you would also want to look into, especially if you're going to be dealing with a lot of fabric that frays or pulls apart very easily if it gets caught in anything like lace or chiffon. Pinking, let me see if I can show it right. There we go. Pinking shears. It has kind of like a zigzag edge at the bottom, which are perfect for basically preventing them from fraying or stopping them from fraying while you're sewing. A lot of people also like to use these to kind of give like an edge to the inside of the shirt. So when you're sewing your seam, sometimes it kind of like flaps out. So to prevent it from fraying or to make it look a little bit nicer, you can use pinking shears. But when it comes to things like chiffon or like organza, or the ones where you have to use pinking shears for, you still have to have an edge. Of course, like I said, with the ball gown videos that I have coming up, I will show you what you can do with those. But in a shorter version, yes, you can have a hem, but to make it look a little bit more nicer, I like to use a wood burning tool, and I can show you guys how to do that later, so you don't mess up your apartment. Another one that you can have, I used to have a set. I don't know where the other ones were because there are two other ones, but these are basically really big scissors that I like to use. Now if you're sewing or if you're cutting out pieces of fabric that are pretty thick, I use these because it gives me a bit more grip and it doesn't hurt my hand. Another thing that you can also use is for things like ball gowns or bigger pieces. But mostly I would mostly use this for like thick fabrics and yeah, just thicker fabrics, or if you have to cut like yards of fabric and you don't want to like reach all the way across, you can use this. But yeah, for these I will use for this shirt, I will use the purple ones for the blue, and I will use the white ones for the white shirt. Because yes, you could definitely use these for thin fabrics, but you can also use these for any fabrics. And because the white shirt isn't that heavy of a fabric as the cotton one is, I will use these for the white shirt wherever I put it. But yeah, you won't see me cut it out because I don't have that type of equipment yet, but I will show you guys what it looks like later. I'm going to do it one by one so I know what I'm looking at. But as far as cutting, you're going to cut the front first, then the back. The only thing that you're cutting all at once is the bottom part, because that's going to be the same all around. The front is going to be different from the back, as we can tell. So front first, back second. And if you have to try it on while you are cutting, you can definitely do that. I definitely will be doing that, just to make sure that everything looks the way I want it to. Another thing that you can do before cutting it is put it back on, or at least close the jacket or whatever you're cutting up, just to make sure that everything looks nice. I did that with the seam allowance, and everything looked nice to me, so I'm going to also go ahead and cut it. Another scissor that I found on the floor. Don't keep your scissors on the floor. If you don't want anything fancy, something as similar to this, which comes in most sewing kits, are good to use. I sometimes use these. I don't like using them because the smaller ones, there's less room for error, and it gets to where you want it to go. So it's for the thread, it will go for the to the thread. This one has a higher margin for error. Yes, it's for thread, but it will also cut the fabric if it can. So I prefer to get scissors with like a smaller blade. But yeah, we are going to get into cutting this. I will see you guys later. I want to stop you guys because I forgot about another thing. When you're sewing, or if you wear clothes, you would notice that you have seams on the clothes. Okay, for this one, I have they're somewhere, but seams right here. Okay, they're all around the your clothes, of course, because that's what makes the clothes stay together. Now, if you are planning on reusing the pieces for something specific, okay, you can get what is called a seam ripper. Okay, so you get what is called a seam ripper. Seam ripper essentially does exactly what I just said. It rips the seam. So you put it in between the seams when you see the thread, and I'm not going to do it with this, but you put it where the thread is and go at it until it all comes apart. It'll essentially rip the seam or rip the thread so that you can save the fabric that you are using. So for example, if I can find a seam here, so you probably can't see it well, but you have a thread and you're going to pluck it, wiggle it around until you get to where the thread is and cut the thread. Okay, this is kind of like a bad way of me showing you, but you're going to do that. Make sure you do it away from you because you don't want to cut yourself. But yeah, if you are wanting to save, or if you have a mistake, I'll probably show you guys that in a better way in a different video. But if you want to save basically the piece that you are cutting off, you can use a seam ripper. Or if you don't really care about how it's going to be, you can just use your scissors and cut on the seam. That way, if you do decide that you want to use it, you have at least something there. But don't cut off the seam. It'll make everything look weird. Another thing you can use if you don't use a seam ripper, and these are for more advanced people or people who are good with their hands. When I was working at a bridal shop, we used razors, which is essentially a faster way of using a seam ripper. You do the same thing that you would do with a seam ripper. Line it up to the shirt or the seam and rip the thread. But the only thing about this is that it is a razor, so it will cut you because it's not meant for seams or anything like that, so be careful. But my beginner sewist, you can always use these. There are also larger ones that you can purchase. I think I have a larger one. So I don't have a larger one, but I also have a red one that also comes with a cap. You'll want to keep the cap on at all times when you're not using it because you will stab yourself. But comes off, put it in there. It will make it a little bit larger so you get a little bit more of a grip. But they do have larger ones that you can purchase. But I did want to let you guys know that before you start cutting away at everything. Okay, so now we are back. We're also gonna cut this off. We're back. So now let's take a look at the situation. I have shoulders. Make sure everything is aligned. So the bust area is definitely where I want it to be. The shoulder area, I realized that I'm probably either going to have, I'm going to have to take it in, which I will show you guys how to do. A quick and easy way to do it. But based off of what I see here, everything looks okay. Everything looks okay. I also didn't realize that I had a pocket here, which is pretty cool. I'm not going to take it in just because I don't think it needs it. I don't think it needs it. I might do it anyways, but I don't think it needs it right now. I also ended up adding a kind of like a triangle looking situation here, just so that I can really outline the bust area. But now what we are going to do is, before we get into the second piece, I am going to take in so that I can make sure that everything is flush. Okay, and now to do take in, pretty simple. It's easier to do if you have a dress form, but we don't have a dress form. That's okay. But what you are going to do is make sure that everything is flat where you want it to be. So this shoulder is going to be down. Realistically, you would want to do this on somebody else or something else, just because it's going to be harder to do and it actually coming out as adequate as you want it to be. It's just going to be a little bit harder, but because there's nobody else around, we will just do it on ourselves. So of course you want it to be on the shoulder where it was. On the shoulder where it was, make sure your shirt or the bottom of the shirt is where you want it to be. It's where the shoulder is, and where you want it to be taken up, pinch that area and pin it. There isn't a specific color or type of pin you can use. Just make sure it will pin and go through. And then you can also do the same on this side. Okay, so that is pinned up. When I take it off to go and take it in, I'll just make sure that I have like 2 or 3 pins going across the shoulder area so that it will actually, of course, again, be flush to my shoulder and it's not zigzag or wobbly. You want to make sure it's like seamless so it doesn't, so that the shirt actually fits like a shirt. So now we are going to take it in at the shoulders. So shoulder piece here, the shoulder piece is right here. We are going to take it in right here. Okay, this is kind of like our rough draft. Okay, so we're going to take it out and put it on one piece of the fabric. Okay, and then underneath we're going to make sure that everything is nice and flat. This has like an extra piece of fabric that we don't really want, so we'll move that out of the way. Make sure it's nice and flush like this. Okay, and then you want to add in your pin like so, and you do that all the way across for each one. So now that you have all of your pins, when you go to sew, you can just sew on the line that you have. If you want to give a little bit of room, you can sew towards the smaller part, but essentially to take it in, just sew it on the line that you have. No seam allowance needed. When you're going to sew, you don't want to keep your pins like this because they will get stuck. You can move your pins to the side like so that you can sew over them. Now, it is not best to sew over your pins because they can break or they can become crooked, but I don't take them out. Not saying that you shouldn't, but I don't take them out. Because it's just faster that way. What you can also do is take your chalk, make a line, and then take it in. But to keep the fabric still when you're pushing it through, it's easier to just have pins. That all depends on what you want to do. So if you want to keep the pins in, you can. If you don't, you don't have to. I usually do. But the next thing I am going to do is sew and take in the shoulder piece. But the next thing you want to think about is your second piece. So I'm not sure if I showed this in the beginning, and if I didn't, I'm sorry, but I put little marks here which will show basically the sleeve hole size, or where the sleeves are going to go for my second shirt. So once I have those taken, the shoulders taken in, I can go ahead and work on the second part, or the second part of my shirt, which I will show you guys probably in a later video because this one is probably too long for one person to handle, especially me.